The Shadow Throne, Chapter 25. Rodin's defense was set up less than a mile outside the walls of Drilead and was visible from the minute we crossed the ridge. Although the soldiers of Weimar and Carthia were fighting against the soldiers out on the wide fields ahead of me, the roving river far to our right became a sort of perimeter that Rodin had determined could not be crossed by the enemy. Along the entire river, wide wooden canopies had been built to shield his men from incoming arrows, and the earth was dug up into tall mounds that would barricade against any attacks from straight ahead. The river was narrow here, but it was deep, and except for a few temporary bridges, nobody could cross it without going for a swim. That would make it difficult for the enemy to breach the lines, but not impossible. I intended to make it impossible. My purpose was to get inside the castle walls, or better yet, to get a messenger in there, but we had to hurry. So instead of diving into the heat of the battle, Mott and I rode farther to the south, encountering a few men on the outskirts. From what we could see, they were mostly from Mendenwall, but since we were still dressed in civilians, their guard was low, and they did not expect our swords when they came. As we came closer to the lines, however, those same uniforms became our disadvantage. We rode toward a small glen that carried the roving river beneath the castle walls out to the countryside. We were nearly into the glen when, from out of nowhere, a wall of women came running towards us, screaming and yelling to create confusion and distraction. It worked. Several of the women carried wooden poles connected to each other by lengths of fabric about the size of a blanket. Before I could react or change course, the women ran on either side of my horse and Mott's as well. They passed us almost before we saw them coming and used those outstretched blankets to rip us from our saddles. With a hard thud, I landed on my back on the ground while my horse rode away free. Mott had held on better than I did, but the women didn't give in until they had pulled him down near me. Father owned, some younger girls caught our horses and swung into their saddles. Then yet another swarm produced swords, which they pressed against our chests, while others removed our weapons. We had been overcome by the mothers and daughters of Carthia, and nicely so. Perhaps they should have been my commanders, I thought. The woman threatening me was tall and simply dressed and held her sword with confidence. "Invaders of our country, we sentence you to death under the name of King Jaron of Carthia. Have you any last words?" "Yes, I do, actually." I stripped off the helmet I wore so that she might see me better. "Before using that sword, you should know that my name is King Jaron of Carthia." She reacted with a gasp and widening eyes, signs that she recognized me, and praised the saints that she did. Begging for forgiveness, she removed the weapon from my chest and fell to her knees, as did all the others there. Mott came over and helped me back to my feet. Then I asked the women to rise. The one who had addressed me before said her name was Dawn. "A name that carries feelings of peace and warmth," I said. "Your parents could not have known all you were capable of when they gave you that name." She smiled back at me. "Few soldiers here know what we're capable of, Your Majesty, but Rodin, the captain of your guard, he trusted us to guard this river. Should any of our people come this way needing to get inside the walls, we bring them in through the passage beneath your castle, but no one else will enter. Forgive us for not recognizing you." "Actually, I'm grateful to have been a part of your demonstration," I said, still rubbing my backside. "Down to my bones, I'm impressed with you." "Thank you, sire." Dawn hesitated and glanced at the other women. "My king, there were rumors about your fate in Avenia. Lord Harlow assured us he had seen you alive. It gave us hope, but it's still a great relief to see you with my own eyes." "It is a great relief to be seen," I said. Then, speaking to all the women and their daughters, I said, "Will any of you volunteer to go up this river and into the castle?" This was the same way I had gone several months earlier to claim the throne, and I visualized it perfectly. Once you're inside, you must tell the people the king requests every ounce of heating oil, animal fat, and pitch in the city. Pitch is like black tar. Upon my signal, they will pour it into the river. Do you understand that strategy? Do oil and water mix? No. So what's going to happen to the oil as it flows down the river? It's going to stay on top, right? Why destroy all of our oils? A woman behind Dawn asked. How will we cook or light our lanterns? We'll eat cold food in the dark if it saves our lives, Dawn said to her. We obey the king. I'll send a signal when I'm ready, I said. A single flaming arrow into the air, straight up. I looked over to the girls, as strong in heart as their mothers, though most were no older than Fink. Who will do this for me? A smaller girl near the outside of the group raised her hand. From the comparison of their faces, I instantly knew this was Dawn's daughter. Confirming that, Dawn walked over and gently brushed a hand across the girl's shoulders, then crouched down to face her. There should not be any danger between us and the walls, Dawn said. Still, you must run fast. Don't look back. Once you get inside, tell them you have a message straight from our king. The girl curtsied to me, then set off quickly. I doubted even the wind could catch her. I thanked the women. Then we started back toward our horses, but I heard Dawn calling to us. In each of her hands were leather brigandines marked with the blue and gold colors of Carthia. Mine was a little larger and Mott's a little small, but far better than our thinner Avenian coats. We sewed these ourselves, Dawn said as she fastened mine. They may not be fit for a king, but they're good enough for the proud warriors of Carthia. That's all I ask, I said, happy to finally be rid of the Avenian colors. How can we get behind the lines from here? Dawn explained our best possible route, and Mott and I rode that way. Though it took us back amidst the fighting, Mott stayed ahead of me through most of it, protecting me with the might of several men. I did my part, but he had been right before. I often needed both hands on my sword and felt tired sooner than I should have. I vowed that it would not be necessary in the next battle. I couldn't guess at the numbers Mendenwall had here, but as far as I could tell, Avenia was nowhere to be found. Thankfully, Carthia was assisted by a long number of men from Weimar. Amarinda had told me once that there were armies were cavalry, but I hadn't appreciated their skills until seeing them in battle. A Weimarian soldier ahead of me fought both to his left and his right as needed, and used his horse to fight forward. They acted as one, with the horse seeming to know instinctively what its master required. My skills weren't half so polished, and I promised myself that after the war, I would seek out the Weimarians for training. Mott shouted to the Weimarian soldier that he was here with me, and that we needed his help to get behind the lines. He turned to us. Your captain has already called for a retreat behind those lines. The bridges across the trenches will be removed soon, and Mendenwall won't be far behind. Show us the way, I asked. I can, but it won't do much good. We'll be overrun before this night is over. No, I assured him, we won't. He pushed forward, and with Mott's help and mine, we cut a path toward the lines. Though I saw great courage in my men, the war itself was nothing but ugliness and horror. I resolved again to end it as soon as possible. We were permitted through the lines where the men were being organized for their next round in battle. Our numbers were falling, and it wasn't hard to see that if they were sent out again, most of them would not return. Yet they were calm and focused and ready for whatever might come. Once Mott and I got under the canopies, I was immediately recognized by several of the men. I asked where Roden was, and they said the captain was in the tower at the center of the lines, waiting for the last possible moment to raise the bridges so that as many of our men as possible could get here to safety. What if Mendenwall gets across? I asked one man. The captain says we are to hold this line just as we held the border of Gelen. He's right. I stepped closer to him and asked, how is the captain received by your armies now? The man thought about it a moment, then he said, I would give him my life, Your Majesty. I would have asked more questions, but by then Mott had found us some archers, and we hurried along behind the crowded lines. I relayed my plan along the way, and with wide smiles they told me it wasn't likely to work, but they looked forward to trying it anyway. Word spread quickly that I had come, and a man approached me and said Captain Roden wondered if I had orders for him. I asked, "How long do you think before Mendenwall is at our lines?" "They've fallen back to regroup, sire. We'll hold them off with our trebuchets and archers, but that won't work for long. We expect them within the hour." Do you know what a trebuchet is? You're going to read about that next week in the social studies slide, but it's like a medieval war weapon where it's like a catapult that like pitches rocks, big boulders. "Then tell the captain to keep our men inside these lines." "But if we wait, let's do that. Let's wait." He was confused, but still bowed to me and then hurried away. Mott only smiled. He knew what I had in mind. Throughout the following hour, we watched, waiting for Mendenwall to come, and so they did. In the fading light, we heard them long before we saw the tips of their helmets or wave of their colors. Oh, by the way, trebuchet is spelled like tree bucket, Trebucket, but it's a French word, so you pronounce it trebuchet. Mendenwall marched in lines and in perfect unison. They were coming for us, and they were coming quickly. It was impossible to know how many men they had left, except that the noise of their march was growing. Their advance was held together by the beat of drummers at the rear. Each roll of the drums pushed the battle nearer. Their drums grew louder, bolder. The message in the rhythm was clear. They would be here soon and were bringing our defeat. The men near me stood on restless legs, and some even looked around as if wondering where we'd retreat to once Mendenwall came. I even overheard one comment that we'd be best to run to the castle now and fight from there. But by then, the rhythm of the approaching march had also reminded me of an old Carthian anthem. What's an anthem?
Like a
Song. Likely, many of my soldiers' mothers had sung it to them while they were young, as my mother had to me. I climbed a ladder to gain some height above the group, and then I started singing. Here are the words. "Let the winds blow, lad. Let fall the deep snow. Let the stars fall, lad. We'll answer the call." Others started joining me in singing, and suddenly the drum beats that had seemed so threatening now strengthened us. More words. "Let the dark come, lad. Ask not where it's from. After the fight, lad, we'll see the morning light." Everyone continued singing, even when I turned away to watch the armies approach. When I thought the time was right, I asked an archer to send a flaming arrow straight into the air. Whatever Mendenwall brought to us next, this fight was not over yet.